So if you followed the last little while, we played Mindseye. Mindseye was the latest train wreck that I couldn't look away from in the gaming community. And that game was horrible. Like really, really, really ridiculously bad. And I guess the voice actor for the main character came out in an interview and ripped the game apart. Now, I believe this voice actor was in Mafia. Was it Mafia 3 that he was in? And the video specifically that we're looking at here is by Cyberboy. And I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about it too, because this game was like, it was to the point where it's hilariously bad. It was one of those games. It was like, if you've ever seen the movie The Room, it's so bad that it makes it good a little bit. And the interesting thing is the story until the ending was decent in Mindseye, and the cutscenes were decent. So you were like watching this decent movie with horribly bad gameplay. And I'm very curious to hear what the voice actor has. This is obviously the voice actor. So let's dive into this. This is going to be worth a good laugh.
Seem to not be ready in that way.
So Check It TV posted an interview with Alex Hernandez, the actor for Jacob Diaz in Mindseye, and it's a pretty honest insight into Alex's perspective about how the launch went down. Before we actually get into like the interview bit though, I think...
Is it like Saints Row? Nope. It's... Okay. In case you didn't see like my Let's Play, or I have a review of it on YouTube, like on Ink TV. Think GTA. Now take the open world and have the whole thing there, but you can't go in any buildings. There's no side missions. For most of the game, you can't take other cars. You can't actually steal cars unless they're parked. There's no map. There's no side missions. So it's a linear game on an open world that is not, there's nothing on the open world. And the gameplay is horrible. When the enemies fire bullets, they float in the air for a little bit. I think that summarizes it pretty well.
I think it's fair to say, out of all of the things wrong with Mindseye, Alex's performance definitely isn't one of them.
Yeah, it's the worst game of the year so far. Unless anyone has another competitor for that right now, let me know.
I think in Mindseye, we actually got to see Alex as a really fully fleshed out, proper actor. And despite most actors staying quiet when games come out to a bad reception, Alex has handled this like a champ, and I think you'll watch this and agree. So firstly, the interviewer asked him about the launch of the game and how he personally feels about it.
I mean, you know, it's had a complicated reception, because whenever you work on something for many years, regardless, I work with good people who are trying to do a good thing. And so like, there's a pride in games are hard, man. Games are hard to produce, just like films. It's a really huge undertaking to get one off the ground at all.
If I was him, I would be pissed, because the cutscenes aren't bad. His voice acting at times is bad, but I feel like that's more the way that they put it into the game than his actual voice acting. So in other words, he's the best part of the game. So I would be pissed if I was him.
So I'm proud of the people that I worked with. It's a shame that the gameplay in particular has received such negative reception and such, yeah, I mean, in terms of bugs, as a gamer myself, I completely understand the frustration. Like there's no...
I said this in my review. It's not even the bugs. The game is just not done. It's an open world game with no open world. There's no map. There's no side missions. Even if there was 0 bugs, this game's not done.
To me, as a consumer and as a gamer, there's a shared frustration, and like, why would you as a company release something that seemed to not be ready in that way? In terms of people's opinions about the gameplay itself, I'm a big proponent of like, everybody has an opinion, everyone's entitled to.
You can't say the gameplay was good, brother. Please don't.
Have different tastes to like different things. So if you put the bugs aside, like whether or not people are into it, that's between them and them, right?
Yeah.
You've got to admire his straight up approach here. He's not trying to downplay the issues of the game.
Dude, the bugs are not even the issue. It's the game is not done.
Also makes the point that the game style itself may not be for everyone. I think that's the only thing that I kind of disagree with, as the current Steam numbers kind of represent the fact that this game was for really no one. I feel like this sort of game didn't really hit any specific market, but let me know your thoughts on that down below. Then Alex shares some of his thoughts on the cast that he worked with during the development of Mindseye.
I loved working on it. Like I loved the people that I was with.
And it makes sense. Like, dude, if you take the cutscenes of the game and just put them together and get rid of the gameplay, you have a pretty decent show, movie, whatever you want to call it.
Cast itself was great. Everyone showed up and gave.
You won your first UFC fight. Like, are we talking about like the UFC game or in like real life?
Their all and was a decent human being. We had no assholes, which I'm really grateful for. And I had a blast working on it. Build a Rocket Boy treated me very well. They were very kind to me.
Then Alex goes into a bit more detail on what input he actually got in the role, which is actually really good to hear, because whether it's movies or games, a lot of directors don't really give their talent actual input on their roles itself and some of the lines and dialogue.
In terms, as an actor, you know that you don't have necessarily as much creative direction as you'd like. It's not like I go in there and I go, this is what I think the story should be. But they did allow me opportunity to give feedback, and I did when I felt appropriate about many of the developers were from the UK, and so they'd ask questions that are like, does this feel American? Does this feel blue collar? Does this feel like a soldier? Does this feel like something that someone from his background would say? And there were many times I was like, no, and then they changed it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate they were open and receptive to the feedback that was like, actually, that doesn't sound like
How
us.
how the hell did I just fast forward? I wasn't touching anything. How did that fast forward? My computer has a mind of its own. So he can only talk about the voice acting stuff, right? Like, he can only talk about the voice acting stuff. If you haven't played this game, man, the way that it works is you would go to an area, you'd get a cutscene. The cutscene would be good, and then you'd have to drive to another area, and in the entire drive, which would last between 3 and 10 minutes sometimes, there would be people talking to you on a phone, like a GTA game, like an old GTA game. And then you'd get to the gameplay, and then the gameplay portion of it was garbage, like the horrible part. You'd finish the gameplay, and then you get a cutscene, and that would be decent. But the problem is that 3 to 10 minute driving scene, if there were other things that you could come upon, would happen, would divert you from this just like main line you're driving through, it might have been more interesting, but there wasn't. It was just barren. It was very odd. So because of that, it was just boring as hell. And it's weird to me that he's not saying anything about that.
In the States, that sounds very British or very insert thing.
He was then asked if he expected the game to come out with glitches and issues, and this is the very, very interesting part of the video.
Okay.
No. And I mean, narrative and gameplay is kept very separate, right? Like, so I'm working with the cinematographer, the on-set director, the writers. It's not as I'm introduced to the team mostly because I ask. I'm like, hey, I'd love to meet the people who are developing / working on the physics, or folks who play with my model and my appearance and all that sort of stuff. But it's not as though I don't see them day to day, so I get very little feedback or information in terms of like, how is all of that going, right? You focus on, just like any large enterprise, I have no idea actually how many employees, but in that building day to day, there were, at least 200 people. So it's not as though I'm interacting with each of those people on a day-to-day basis, getting little updates that are like, here's how everything's going. And so when the game came out, obviously you're very excited. It's just this moment that's been years in the making. And then to receive the feedback that was like, oh, this is glitchy. And it's glitchy. And I'm being like, wait a minute, what? That's not what I was expecting. I think
I wonder if he's going to say anything about it getting rushed out. Because it got rushed out because they didn't want to compete with GTA. It needed to come out well before GTA. I bet you, I wonder.
For nothing, there's something to be said about the model of studios releasing these games. I don't know whether it's not a lack of QA. I met the QA testers and they seem competent at their job.
Clearly weren't.
But for whatever reason, the company deciding to release something that has these issues.
Oh, I'm waiting to say rush it out.
And then sort of taking care of it post-mortem, post-release. I obviously we were not the first game to do that. Like a very notorious example is Cyberpunk, and there have been others. And as a gamer, as a consumer, I don't love that. I don't love that model. I don't like that moving forward. I'm not a business person, so like I also want to be very clear that I have no idea.
The also other like really big thing you have to remember with that is this game isn't going to make enough money for them to continue to fix it post-launch. Cyberpunk did, because they already had the trust from Witcher. Build a Rocket Boy didn't have that, which means they're not going to fix, like, this game's not going to get fixed. I will tell you right now, this game, the open world, the map, the racing, all of these things that they planned on putting, they're not going to come. I almost guarantee you.
Why that decision gets made. I will just say that from a consumer perspective, and I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, I think it does more long-term harm than good to your reputation to release something that feels like it is in a state of less than 100% and then charge 100% of the price. I think you have to be honest with your consumer. And in fact, like, I as a player would rather be told this is in beta. Like, I know you've been waiting for this for a long time, but this is a beta release of this game. And so whether it's you get to play it for free on some sort of invite list, or it's $20, $30, $15, what insert price. I don't know what the model would be, but like, it's a much smaller fee. Know that this shit isn't done. No, it's not done. So please come interact with our thing, give us feedback, but no, it's not done. And obviously beta is a thing like that is a already pre-established practice. And so I'm not sure.
Look at his body language. You can tell that behind the scenes, he is not this, he's pissed. He's pissed that he put this hard work into this thing. And like, let's be honest, he probably still got paid, but like, he's pissed.
What drives companies to essentially carry out beta testing, like, without calling it that?
Now, at this point in the video, I just want to point out it's very easy for actors to take a backseat and avoid any of the confrontation that would come with a game coming out in this state. Obviously, everything that happened with Mindseye is not Alex's fault. Of course it isn't, but it would be very easy for him just to say no to interviews and not talk about this. I did actually try and reach out to him for an interview. Unfortunately, couldn't get through to him. I would personally love to have a chat with a guy and talk about his directing. He has mentioned he does directing. Personally, this video is going to sound like I'm absolutely glazing the guy, but his acting's good. He seems like a chill dude, and everyone that I've spoke to that's had conversations with him, like whether it be interviews or otherwise, have all said that he's genuinely just a really, really lovely and likable bloke. And I genuinely feel bad for him, the way that all of this has unfolded. I think one of the reasons why us as a community might resonate with Alex better is that there's a lot of voice actors out there that they start off doing voice work for games and then become kind of fans of gaming, and sometimes that can come across as a little bit disingenuous, but with Alex it is pretty well documented that he is a gaming fan, and you can kind of tell that when it came to his performance in Mindseye. Whether that was Builder Rocket Boy's input or his input, the character did feel convincing and it didn't feel like a poorly written character. There were some issues with the story and some quite big plot holes.
There's definitely some big plot holes,
but the actual
that's what I was saying before. He was one of the voices in Mafia.
Performances themselves, the motion capture, the acting, even like vocal tonality. There's a few scenes where Alex Hernandez's voice becomes quite shaky and it's convincing. It doesn't feel like some cheap budget TV program. It genuinely does feel like a compelling acting role, and this is something that I've been very vocal about since I started covering Mindseye. Out of all of the problems with Mindseye, none of the actors' performances were really the issue, and even the writing to some extent didn't feel cheesy. It's very easy for like futuristic sci-fi games to lean too heavily into the tech to the point where it becomes cheesy. I think Watch Dogs 2 was a really good example of that. Some of the stuff that's said in that game just makes you want to bang your head against the wall, and I found it overly cringe in so many different aspects.
I definitely played Watch Dogs 1. I don't remember if I played Watch Dogs 2.
Mindseye didn't suffer with those particular issues, and I think that comes down to a really good understanding between Builder Rocket Boy and the actors of what the story needs to be. Now, the rest of the interview is linked down below. I'm not going to play the whole interview. You know, Check It TV's did an amazing job of getting this interview, and I'm extremely jealous. But the pinned comment is a link to the interview, so go.
So we're not gonna go and watch the whole interview, but I think the interesting thing about that is I think the voice actor is probably a million times more pissed than he's leading on. He did a decent job, and in fact, voice actor wise, I would say he's probably the only character that did a good job. And like, the story was okay. His portrayal of the character was good. I would be pissed if I was him. I think that's what it comes down to. And you could see that, but you could also see like he was holding back. He wanted to say a little bit more, but probably couldn't. But yeah, we all know the game got rushed out because they wanted to be released before GTA. They wanted to build some hype behind it. They knew they looked like GTA, and the game was just not finished, bug wise and feature wise, like whatsoever. There's no leveling. There's no making a better character. There was no open world. There was nothing. It was just a complete barren game that was riddled with bugs. That's what the game was, with some decent cutscenes. That's about it.